Mr. Yor Lalit, please come, sir. Yeah. Mr. Lalit, sir. Can I request Mr. Gopal Subramanian, please, sir, come and receive the award? Next awardee, Mr. Usgaonkar, please. Please come, sir. Can I now request my law teacher, Mr. Professor Mulchand Sharma? My teacher, sir. I had opportunity of studying under Professor Mulchand Sharma. Yeah.
I request everyone to be seated, please. Please be seated. Please be seated. I still see some people standing. Why don't you please sit, take your seats? We would have loved to hear all the awardees give a short response, but due to time constraints, we had decided to request Mr. Gopal Subramaniam to give a response on behalf of the awardees. Thank you.
The most redoubtable justice of courage, fortitude, candor, Justice A.P. Shah. A lawyer without an equal or a parallel, Fali Nariman. A lawyer with a perennial silver tongue who never loses his cool, the Attorney General for India. The President of the Bar Association of India, who must recollect that I saw him in a photograph with Lord Denning, a photograph which was taken 38 years ago. And of course, my friends, Yakesh, Prashant, Rachna, and the most distinguished gathering, and above all, the teacher at whose feet I sat and learnt the law like Rohinton, Professor Mulchand Sharma. T.S. Eliot once wrote an essay which is really an essay applicable to all lawyers, which is, there is no individual talent without tradition. and unless we have a sense of tradition, I don't think we will even discover ourselves. The more we see in terms of tradition, actually, the more we see in ourselves. Unless that connect is made, I think our role as lawyers is reasonably empty and purposeless. The reason why I'm taking this up is that all of us look for what is called a Rykov effect. Rykov was a Russian neurophysicist, but he believed that if you looked at great people, great lawyers, great judges, great teachers, you could, and if you persistently looked at them, you could imbibe something from them. And you're all very fortunate that we have here in this entire room people, and I say it unabashedly, I looked at them, absorbed from them, and perhaps I am what I am because of what I did. The Rykov effect. But what do they stand for is very important. I think the ability to be independent, to be fearless, courageous, unmindful of money, any form of power, any form of honor, and above all, anything which may come your way, is what marks the independence of the legal profession. To be able to say no when it is at your doorstep requires greater courage than actually just wait for it to happen. I think we all have important moments in our life. I wish to tell you that when the emergency, and I'm very glad that Mr. Nariman referred to it somewhat feelingly, when the emergency was in its full operation, I, as a young student, used to visit the court. And I recounted that recently, that that's the only time I saw an Attorney General for India who was actually escorted by 2 men in the front and 2 men on the side. And I think Mr. Nariman would recollect how that poor Attorney General one day collapsed bleeding in his chamber. This is only to tell you that our profession has also come under severe constraints. But how did Mr. Nariman actually, shall I say, quietly deal with the situation? Very quietly, very silently, he demitted office. How did we know that he demitted office? It was actually, I saw that he was arguing in court number 4, a matter of Premier Automobiles, a labor matter, before Justice Alagiri Swami. I'm only telling you that nobody prattled what he did. They all did things out of their conscience. But as Prashant, you rightly said, when you do things out of your conscience, you have to also do it very quietly. It's not necessary that everybody in the world needs to acclaim what you do. The second thing, which is equally important, is that if we don't impute positivism and respect for our institutions, whatever we see in them, if we don't continuously do that, I'm afraid we are not going to survive ourselves. That is why I always have wondered that in spite of the gravest of provocations, the gravest of situations, I always saw that our leaders of the bar were very careful, very circumspect, and would always see that the institution, and when I say the institution for them, it means not only the living judges, the living lawyers, but also those portraits in the Chief Justice's court, those portraits in court number 2, the portraits of Justice Venkatramaya and Justice Khanna, all of them matter. and they matter so, so, so very much. What I heard today, Chief Justice A.P. Shah, was actually not that of a former Chief Justice. It was that of a man who belongs to civil society, but a man who is so fearless. And you can well imagine that how fearless he must have been when he discharged his judicial functions. But we all know that the real recognition is not by an office. The real recognition is not by a position. The real recognition is what happened today. What you gave me is the ultimate recognition. I got it from three of the greatest Talbots here. A judge whom I would always bow down to, perpetually. A lawyer, if I may say so, a bit of a beau idol for me, Mr. Nariman. He used to even use umbrellas very early on in the 1970s. So you must know that I have been tracking lawyers all the time. And Mr. Venugopal will not forget. And he has taken unfair advantage of knowing me ever since I was very, very, very young. So, yes. So I must really tell you that the greatness of this profession is the ability to be together. The greatness of this community is we all can share a common bond of values, of truth. I must say, when we talk of Mr. Setalvad, we must not forget an incident which happened between him and the Maharaja of Mysore. He had gone to my uncle's place, who was the Advocate General at that time, Mr. Somnath Iyer, and he came there, and the Maharaja brought a huge salver which included jewelry. And Mr. Acharya would recollect that Mr. Setalvad, who had a fairly gruff voice, said, "I only deal with advocates on record, and that is it." And the jewelry just went back. But this is to tell you that we've had such doyens in the bar, and that is what keeps us going. I will keep going, and I promise you the day I think I can't measure up to any of these gentlemen in their standards, you won't see me the next day. If I can measure up to their standards, it's worth practicing law. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Subramaniam, for your very, very inspiring response. That time is not far off when you will also be joining this side, and you have been a role model, you see, for the younger generation, and you will continue to. Friends, now we will present the copies of the Indian Advocate, which is the official journal of the Bar Association of India. We could not bring out this issue earlier, but now with the untiring, sincere and committed efforts of our Editor-in-Chief, Ms. Madhvi Devan, you see, we have been able to bring out this copy of the Indian Advocate. And I would request the other members of the editorial board to please come here. That is Mr. Asim Chawla, the joint editor, Anandita Pujari, if she's here, Sarita Kapoor, and Nandini, you please also join us. You have been a great